Hi, everybody. I'm going to introduce Kimberly, and then, yeah. So Kimberly Alidio is a poet, is a poet and author of Y Letter Ellipses, From Selva Oscura, Once Teeth, Bones, Coral, from Belladonna. This is the first one. It's a very beautiful book. And here's the second one. This is off of Belladonna. Acela Falls from Portable Press at Yo-Yo Labs, and After Projects to Resound from Black Radish, as well as Solitude, Being Alien from Dancing Girl Press. When I was sitting down to be like, what am I going to say for Kimberly's introduction, I was met with resistance, like, oh, I actually shouldn't, I'm not going to say anything. And I kept on being like, oh, I'm going to say this thing, and then no, I'm not going to say anything. So instead of saying what Kimberly is about, I'm going to just share a very vague, rambling description of what it's like being a reader of Kimberly's work. I'm obsessed with the experiences I've had as a reader with Kimberly's poems, with Kimberly's use of language and her linguistic perception. Kimberly's poems bring words to the edge of their meaning. The language is full of sound, both on the page in word combinations, spacing or lack of space, punctuation, and by the sound of words together and alone, and the sounds of sounds. There are many instances reading her work where reading a line or a word would make me laugh, but then speaking the same line or word might bring tears. She uses words like the things they sometimes represent as objects, perfectly or imperfectly placed in space, heavily with sound and presence, or light, silent, stuttering, elongated, meant to lead you to the next place, page, era, etc. I feel encouraged in both of her most recent books, Once Teeth, Bones, Coral, and Y Letter Ellipses, to not make or gather meaning, but to sense, feel, witness, listen, or be in company with. To push myself or be pushed beyond and challenge the hierarchies and social structures that give words positions, give positions within a page's space, sequence, or privilege, that give privilege to easily recognizable articulations of time, space, or place. Her articulations of perception can be tethering, anchoring, grounding, unhinging, confusing. They can center or dance around to center, all simultaneously. Her poems are threshold, lull, wave, song change. A breakfast crescendo, afternoon catastrophe, crisis architecture, an embodiment of time, what time does to a body, humorous, calm calamity, and survival by proximity, in direct conversation with each other, and the materiality of words that bring them together, are transformed as if through a prism into an incredible expression of consciousness that blurs, breaks, and blends what might be defined, termed, or set to binary by the words queer, record, document, witness. Toward the other, toward the self, toward the world, toward smushing those three things together, never alone, ever. Prose on poetics, memory, historiography, and postcolonialism has appeared in Harriet Woodland Pattern blog, Poetry Northwest, Social Text, American Quarterly, and the essay anthology, Filipino Studies, Palimpsests of Nation and Diaspora. An excerpt from her new manuscript, Ambient Mom, was selected as a finalist in the 2020 BOM Poetry Contest. She was assistant professor of history at the University of Texas, a postdoctoral fellow in Asian American Studies at the University of Illinois, and a history teacher at St. Stephen Episcopal School in Austin, Texas. She is an MFA candidate in poetry at the University of Arizona and holds a PhD in history from the University of Michigan. She lives in Tucson, Arizona with her partner, the poet Stacy Somasek. I'm going to post some links of your work in the chat so that people can access it. Everyone, please welcome Kimberly.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Ben. Your friendship is tremendous to me. I'm so honored to read for Segue. It's just, I can't even express. There's so many things I feel like I can't express today, right now. I love the joy that I am witnessing. So I'm in Tucson, otherwise known as the homelands of the Tohono O'odham and the Pasquayaqui. And even in Tucson, I mean, Arizona, like just was edging, as we may say. But to hear the honking and the whoops, maybe not in crowd form, but just kind of in passing, has been amazing. But I think most of all, it's just like I'm just exhausted. So the kind of relief brings exhaustion. But I'm really happy to be here and to see what poetry brings us today. I'm going to start with a poem that I actually was just working on in the past weeks or so. It's in progress. And it feels appropriate. It's based on things that are unanswerable. Questions. Recto of a grocery list, akin to newsprint, in the belly of a crocodile mummified at Tebtunis. A Sappho fragment ends up on the underside of press-on nails working the sourdough. We carve jack-o'-lanterns atop poetry spines lettered in gum Arabic-soaked vegetable char. Someone sighs over buttered toasts with HD, recounting teen loves at the Dead Mall. What makes the news today stuffs our dead with phone chargers, a kind of internet cartonnage. Story of New Spain, Tin Santos, is inked by a woman often talking up Anglo miracles in the daily news. The voice of God entered her car the morning her daughter's shot. No one need click locks at the UPS, but God waits to still her with a thinned veil. Like a blanket, she's intact, whether by suture or packed with papyri. It's really the told story, knitting brain synapses unraveled at point blank, the workhorse turned champion. Dead husband ever immune to rattlesnake, popping up a frog in the kitchen sink at the sound of his name. Bridegroom rat, unstealthy as rain on tin, stealing into the brain, sweet bitter smelt. The last Airbnb guest knows the rats are coming into her dreams on high stamped soda cans. The dog living outside answers to Malinche, and like her namesake, earns entry into a house just to wreak havoc. And I'm happy to continue reading from Once Teeth, Bones, Coral, as I've been doing all fall. So I'm going to read the fifth of 6 longish poems called Continent Reverence. Look, shoulder, mountain, hand rest table, untitled icon, slung angle light, magnum artillery century, communion hypnosis, high gradient permanent grassland, midlife silhouette. Whelm opacity, site land interior, final decree, caesura warm. 15 concrete, irreverence cast, cold bunker, cry window, dry grass, grounds antelope, confessor, structure no state, tether, portal farther, southernmost temple, hill rise, degree saturate, walk zero, walk rabbit, stone. Reincarnate, reenact, earthquake. I am tendril, fret finger, stomach radius, compass, snake, infinite ink. Kin, planar, prism, eyelid, bloom, lip. Landscape, brim, look, ancestor, hollow. Invade millennia, dwell, bind, curtain. Close eye, intimate idiom. To say your land, vanished, thin, scrap, feet, name is sane, mouth hysterical. To say I was never meant to be. Origin, moment, first. American boot, hit, ground. You're killing me. Orion sits low, eyes, noisy lights, purified checkpoints. Sirius pulls leash, masked master. Bed, wash, expired, arroyo. Only retro, Mercury, dark wine, pull. No safe passage, constellation, mark, obsidian. Search, star bright, constant mass, close distance. Fall, cool cheek. Bumper, car, collide. Summons, chaos, falling. Speech, less. Want, soft, hand. Guide, stomach, white shirt. Stroke, close, cut, hair. Moan, touch, wet, receive, fall, arm. Pin, manage, thank, sleep, say, armpit, gentle. Disentangle, bed, drift, minute. Native to you, inhabitant of you, so as to be entitled to maintenance, so as to be chargeable upon you, deserved by you, pertain to you, in the power of you, at your disposal. Your concern, your proper business, resident of proper place. Sees neither, fury, hatred, every vessel fill. Vertigo, horizon, soft. Stone, touch. Devotion, obsession, crescent, cradle, ache. I swear I can rip the walls off this house. Bare hand. Continent, reverence, pleasure. Cancer, X, fluent, vein, bloom. Mira, left, right, familiar. Colonial, melancholy. Ancestral ties, squeezed, eyes, pleasure. Watch, secondhand clock, formless intimacies, wounds. Silent, blank lines, ellipses, whole page, empty prophecy. Don't want to write, monuments. Stand sudden, say, let's pay, we're losing light. And I'm going to read two poems from a more recent project, Ambient Mom. Materiality, maternality, inherence. When rhythm, sonority, ambient sound is what your mother shares with you while you are part of her body. Inherence, not inheritance. Never been separate, perlocutions, aligned or resistance to utterance. Meanwhile, coloniality stimulates ownership and possession, a poetic self tracing the origins. The day came to state what came through the reference portal. Everything done already. The therapist's usual. Language of my mother. Each sound already a distinct vehicle and tenor. Return, impossibility, a whole, not wound or glory of first being. If Daryl Hannah can learn human, i.e. English, from daytime TV, Surely a cry melody and a kitchen table make for the mimetic diptych of kinship, a full-on underworld in the subconscious real, an address circuit across 7 generations of domestic space. Demania, Marciana, Antonia, Maria, Sriaca, Nemesia, Querina, Asuncion, Josefa, Felicidad, Presentacion, Rosalinda, Kimberly. Unseen accomplices. An apparition floats above the bed scene, mother of perpetual help, saved her bleeding and no blood available. Family pilgrimage to Manoag every May. A daughter is an ex voto. Having witnessed most of the 12 pregnancies she was alive for at the foot of the bed, became an obstetrician queen. Praise the novena continuously, in addition to daily mass. She, the narrative testimony of a saint or a Mary in action in the wake of catastrophe. A pregnancy of hidden perils, fraughtness the result of 4 years of stoicism. Sublimation sinking into the invisible, the miracle manifestation, an echo chamber lined with ears. Receptacle, the space in which drives enter language, space, area, land, that set up the possibility of signification. Ears, native illiteracy through the line and reference, not just surface, hums and murmurs, deictics and their opposite. Heartbeat, hand gestures, the breath, the primped hair follicle, distant kin, the finger, genealogy, reanimation. A recorded archive of babies crying in Pangasinan, rises and falls, tones, lengths. The occasion to try out consonants is when the cry cuts into another language. Speaker-reader circuit obscures all other circuits. This composing in unlearned languages, prenatal perceiving and processing prosodic patterns of Pangasinan of the everyday palpability of experience. Novena, stretching, Zumba, mass, lunch, nap, walk, gardening. Pangasinan Kora. In a plain ponytail and no makeup, we roll R's deep into the ground, taga iner. Earthbound on its axis, deturning or detuning, undertone, undersound, arrive out of neither from the cut, where we hear ground rolling absent of meaning. Back channels say there is neither I nor you. Musakala uy, mga uy ng dulo. Uy, DMs, okay, cute baby, into the buffering, a counterpoint to the front of house monologue at the behest of the disembodied Yours and mine turn into a multi-channel we, the way Fred says we. Ado, antoy nangaran mo. Ano yung ang ado? If you're meeting someone you don't know, yung ado. Akala ko arrow. Hindi siya malambot na o. Repeat what we like us saying, also what we don't like us saying. By mimesis, record and roll us all disorderly into Kora. Aru antoy naran mo. What's archived by a language is not its working, as it sort of lays down an empty track, a substratum. For us, second person singular is anto, but in a sentence it's antoy, upon which focusing, smearing, finding, in an improvisatory ear brings us back to what is written. Overheard, registered somewhere, channel wordways branch headlong, double consciousnesses of lineage and fracture, say, sigue siren, in which siren makes it sweeter. Okay, I'm going to close with 3 pieces from Y Letter Ellipses from Selva Escura. And one is a It's funny, I don't know whether I write non-long poems anymore, but it's kind of a series. It's called A Girl Knows Geopolitical Strategy. Right. Intricately elegant history of what she, futuristically speaking, cloud formations say, an old unfolding expression of presence recount, very clunky task, extracted words, steps aside the present, back for clues, isolating turns of phrase. Fragments created by past selves and strangers, words her bone structure, arrive, puts her pants on, answers the door, whoever wanders onto the front step, something among her belongings to offer. Fragments her body into someone historical, existence. All actions require paranoid questions about her actions. Stats are sculptural, echoes are rhetoric. Orange is a text. Building is a poem. These numbers stand for shimmer. A table with 5 columns, X, today's date, indicators, O, the destination state. A compendium of phrases and news reports and analyses. Word for both poverty and pity. Center justified list in the thousands and millions ordered from smallest to largest. Start with 6 zeros, 5 columns of numbers, 1 word all, 4 rows across, not ordered in any way. Strip all but container, columns, rows, 3 lines, 2 lines, arrangement of identifiers, the hand that compiles. Arrives at our moment, traces of past worlds that give life and death, church, corporation, concept, moon, her animal ways, genetic, precondition, atavistic selfies, the 4 horsemen, grammar, wet, machinery, immodest earnings, medieval cataclysm forecasting Silicon Valley, opiates, use value of an ear, an arm, an instep, a tool that voices. Enter foreground hailed clumsily, social science and siblings called yeoman, Republican virtue and literacy. Unintended rather than handed down, weed to seed, grid serializes lateral to magnificence. New explanation regime, objects for observing, cut out florals real thin. Utility in a wide world of investments, whole of the body of the story. Object perception gets us over diminished thinking insides relative to overbearing unthinking outsides. Physical surroundings infiltrate the everyday, weeds out floating dead impersonators leak. Corpses made by machine. Machine-made corpses and all kinds of memories dropped at sea, marinating urine, urinating mariner, Ursa Minor guardian, urban marina, ruminate, Abu Ghraib marine. Self-diagnosed morphs, alters boundaries of historical form. With labored breath undoing, turns, reveal what forms. With aspiration removes parasitic hope in time. A small moat pressed. Rubbery give suggests carcass, life without history. Reversed, the high priestess spills occulted intimacy and desert light. For gesture, the way a hand is placed on a vessel, the vessel that can never be filled. Transport. Breathe into place, ghost, trope, shadow, nearly feral, mocking ideal, twitch. Instigate for adults already knowing rediscovery. Remake themselves in rediscovering at the edge. The pioneer insists is always the center. The lip of making, renewal, a retake. Play circle proves literacy. Facial muscles convey mapping. Coordinates carry the center to every town stationed, a cultural distraction. Misdirect to absolute pliability. Mutually beneficial expansion, ooze moves the center, centers the action, catalyzes the edge. Can't spark timely impulse to take on reason, barter used goods for new POVs, hunt for vacant plots on sale, crave the raw, misprinted, extinct. Tired of labeling everything unfeelingly, collapses at generic human appeals, Corresponds equivalent and parallel to soft power, disconsoles as no one permits. Girl in the geography, howling hungry, a greedily detailed inventory, happy monster, regresses toward the natural claim. Now the past is a drop in the earth, an array of survivor, an antique shop. The young died a suckle at a cavern's teat. Grandmas weave traditionally bending back sheep heads, memory an arch of foot, reason for a good time. Kids clean knuckles and long intestines, don't pick your nose. Faint a fake fat yuck yarn. Always animism, our matrilineal loom. Shoulder a moon crater of mulched national flower. Pluck variegated acrylic petroleum, slake forgetting. We quarrel in daylight, attracting spectators with our scent and noise in a district for participating in world news, unsexed by polar self-interests. Other lovers battle over realizable dreams, dream us as structural bystanders. Textbooks merely described from a safe table, scandalized by loud argument. Empty excuse strives for a neutral middle, reassured that spats break out with bad weather. An amnesiac princess at the door of a room, a housekeeper receives antibiotics from the doctor to smuggle to Maquis. Spotted, she shrinks back into geopolitical shadow. Correspondence from blue alleys on the pleasant promise surrounding unpleasant isolation. Refuse to conclude, gape, suck spinal column. Immigration an active life-giving or excretion. Inflated numbers, but marginal phenomenon. Stop doubting this matters to people not here. There brings creeping obsession and recoil here. Catholic conservative, Maoist leftist, liberal exceptionalist. There and here, allied behemoths at war. Orchestrate rapid response as lattice scaffolding. Circulatory rush. Irrelevant, illegible. A fist and a flag are thought to encapsulate the dead's discovery of truth and meaning, especially any dead interrogated by police and recalled only in law and census. Refuge in the traditional symbols of our left makes us powerfully small. My enemies I no longer assume are yours, transfixed by private glories beyond embarrassment. My own revolution this morning, you quoted Artaud, all action is cruel, push the limits, to be relevant today is to kill words from the stage. At night, traumatized states of alienation talk radical slogans, time is now, no other, to aggregate visions, where what words are true, words not myself, own antidote. Recall private language, nectar, bloodstained sheets, is ethics of attention to our cruel hungers, eat their own tails as a circle of light. At the cusp of dawn, a candle on the mantle, most gorgeous searing light on management strategies. Reckless feeling attends a hummingbird before solidarity fixes which reds are proper prey for such a precise machine. Official verse, dive bombs, informally, around us, keepers of new arcana. Okay, for the last one, I just want to thank everyone for coming and listening and to segue. And this is the title poem, Why Letter Ellipses. There's, who's in here? Amiri Baraka, Bernadette Mayer, Andrea Dworkin, and Pier Paolo Pasolini. Why letter ellipses? Days, lunar eclipse, sever lines, silver dust. Why letter ellipses? Milky wool's steady preference, veil down the aggressive bed. Anger, sentiment, coy infant. The anti-fascists beat the fascists in the Second World War. Is that correct? Now, for instance, in the Philippines, the Americans took over a Filipino liberation front called Say the Hooks to organize them as an anti-fascist guerrilla group. Now, the minute the fascists, the Japanese, were beaten, then the anti-fascists reestablished the same kind of colonial policies in the Philippines that the Japanese would have put in anyway. The same kind, and in fact, it's worse, because the Filipinos are much less interested in having a white man tell them what to do than having a Japanese tell them what to do, much less. Oh, there are probably all kinds of anti-fascists. But what I'm saying is that fascism has been made obsolete by America. That's what I said before fascism. There's no fascism, it's Americanism. America is the blight on the world. How people moved naked, except women with props. I crossed Campbell's slowed eye, screeched arm up to coffee, lips savored, crosswalk, men or horses, home de lost skyline, how Americans steamed, except subsonic, let everything fall, already crawling. A Sunday in New York at the Dutch Man, flea rehearsed in Airbnbs near the I-10 in Ludlow. Cleaning crews knock, high fee, low pay, then the real thing, terror bedroom, neighbor frats. Know you're homophobe, landlord. I'm home, wish I could say, you must go. Stars interspersed between God and angels, everything glittering and gold. Church was different from home. It had a lofty effect on one's thoughts. Levitating Latin, every trapping was very inspiring. Our holy human energy sustain our holy human lives. Color, mandala, flesh, no certainty, no what think happened. Moral, no national tradition, no trivia happened, no why, what fools, no adult. Ages 5 to 20, I saw startling looking figures with startling ideas, heads encased in long starched veils, Ursuline capes when it rained, looked like wraiths. Our holy human energy telling the necessary lies. I'm not saying there is no fascism, but surely what I know and what I'm seeing at the moment will not inspire me. Stream Free in a university taught me about blossoming in the form of Nastasia Kinski. Can't prove harm and good at nothing. A regard kept mannered from life and writing and person. By the very nature demonic because its goal is power. Always running with great black umbrellas to kill bats, literally hanging in the belfry. Bewild privacy mistaken for being set free. Fire, sun, rises, crackle, desires, slate, empty text of singular purpose, very soothing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. We will all be able to give you a big round of applause at the end. Right now, we're going to take a quick 6-minute break. Please consider donating $5 to the Segue Foundation. The details are going to be on the screen, and we'll be right back with Joyelle McSweeney. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Segue Reading Series. Thanks again for being here on this eventful evening. I am now going to introduce Joyelle McSweeney, who is the author of plays, a book of essays, and several novels and poetry collections. Most recently, this year's Toxicon and Arachne, published by Nightboat, which constitutes a major contribution to contemporary poetry. She offers textured and complex lines, perverse juxtapositions, stimulating trip-ups, which you really must chew on before digesting, yet pleasurably tickle the palate despite the charnel aftertaste. An acute sense of consonance and rhythm provide footholds for a steep journey down into the outrageous abyss of the human condition. She has said, quote, "I consider myself slammed, pierced, and annihilated by a single eviscerating historical fact, the millennia-long political and ecological catastrophe whose name has been lately formulated, the Anthropocene," end quote. Our environmental conditions reflect the state of our civilization, and the poet notes, "This end time is going to last a while." McSweeney's poetry is thoroughly supported by an academic framework of her own invention named the necropastoral. Quote, "Necropastoral is a political aesthetic zone in which the fact of mankind's depredations cannot be separated from an experience of nature, which is poisoned, mutated, aberrant, spectacular, full of ill effects and affects," end quote. It is in this subterranean space she dwells, parsing injury and searching in the dark for the redeeming phosphorescence of the other. McSweeney's work demonstrates a poetics of viscerality that makes me distinctly aware of my material condition, that I'm a fragile skeleton covered in meat, wrapped together in a wiry nervous system, blood in a spongy flesh container. I can almost feel my T cells. Her verse is thick with body parts and the gangly microbes therein. With a sense of tenebrous humor, she endeavors to hold a cheerleader's cadaver up to nature. She deconstructs our physicality, separates the pieces into jars of green fluid, then stitches us back up again and puts us back to use. In her book, Percussion Grenade, she dares to insist you read her poems aloud, then feeds us lines like, opentropy, opemnity, opevisceration, openology, opiagenocide. In this way, verse reverberating in your throat, the poet ventriloquizes through you, turns you into the speaker or her loudspeaker. She brings the poems to the body and through it. She positions the body as a zone of violence and malfunction, where energies roil in constant battle, fetuses fester, organs ooze toxins, and cells divide unevenly. Yet her microscopic attention to anatomical detail also symbolizes the broad implications of biopower and the widespread manipulation of entire populations against their best interests and against nature. Her concentration on birth, sickness, and death is strikingly personal and abstractly political, uncovering the evidence of systems of control that manifest in our very blood. To understand that this is not an exercise in futility is to grasp the difference between darkness and despondency. The former constitutes Dickinson's carriage ride with death, while the latter is a bitter, helpless, yet entitled pessimism. McSweeney isn't pessimistic. She is realistic. She's hyper-realistic. She does not conjure toxicity to be conquered by it. She recognizes the horror of the Anthropocene and, in naming its consequences, resists them. Catastrophe and survival go hand in hand. Arachne is a poem sequence about a bottomless tragedy that left McSweeney demented with grief. The death of her newborn third daughter. The New Yorker notes that, quote, the idealect that McSweeney perfected for all over ambient horror must now zero in on a targeted and personal loss, end quote. Within the rigorous framework of her poetics, the poet allows herself to be radically forthcoming in expressing the conditions of inexpressible heartbreak. I'm going to tell you something so bad that when you hear it, you're going to know it's true. Sharing this agony with us is a way to foster resilience and strategize against the cruelty of a callous universe. I don't think I'm aware of another poet like her who is as esoteric as she is giving. The reader will get bruised in the process, but it's worth it. Quote, I pour out all my opera like an anvil, end quote. Everybody, on this day of national relief and celebration, please welcome Joyelle McSweeney.
All right, well, thank you so much, Lonely, and Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing this evening with me. It was such a pleasure to be in the presence of all those summonings and to think about absencing and presencing and the ways in which they are constantly seemingly changing place. So thank you for having me tonight, and thank you, of course, to Segue. So on this particular evening, I have been so knocked out by the joy across the country, and you know, it's an uncomplicated joy. It's a complicated situation, but the joy itself just seemed to rise like a fluid across the country, and it was the labor of so many hands to arrive at that joy. And I'm going to be thinking about what those two things mean, and also what that joy can bring next. It seems almost totally unhinged to the actual, electoral, political, what have you. It was unleashed and now it's out there. And what can joy bring? It's a thrilling thought. And the idea that joy is actually something that has to be made and maintained. Interesting. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm so grateful to have a chance to think about it and to follow where others are leading. Fantastic. So tonight, I was thinking what I really wanted to do then was to really just go ahead and raise the dead so they could be here with us, and to think about like spectral presencing and spectral vengeance. And, I've wondered for a long time if posthumousity could be a kind of futurism. And when I think about being posthumous, I feel so strong. So a lot of the poems that I'm going to read tonight are about meeting the dead in that zone, and possibly my own death as well. This seems to be one of those nights where maybe the drains are going to reverse for a little while. And that as an American, I think a lot about plumbing. So the idea that the drains might reverse, I'm ready to rise. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to jump in and read some poems. And they are from I think I'm mostly going to read from the Toxicon, which came about, I was just thinking a lot about the lyric and what the intensity of the lyric, and whether that intensity could be a kind of toxin, because it feels both toxic and fatal at the same time. And so these are some poems from Toxicon, and they are pretty much ghost conjuring poems. So the first one I'm going to read, I actually have not voiced in a long time, so I'm interested to hear what voice comes out. It's the Ars Poetica that starts the book, and let's do it, right? Here we go. And it sort of came about from looking at Etruscan sarcophagi in which the dead are reclining, and often sitting together and grinning with really wonderful hairstyles. And let's do it. Let's ride that boat. So here we go. Ars Poetica. I wanted to unlock my phone. I wanted to unlock the geode. I wanted to press it to my skull. I wanted to go right through the temple, bedazzle my occipital, be dazzled like a jeweled vagina or an improved corpse, incipio. And you can come in now. Bedazzled like a victim or an improved phone. Nuncio, you're fired, now go home. Get back on that fucking U-boat you rode in on and float. After I gave birth, an immediate labial tuck. Cataract surgery, a backing track, and a ticket for checked luggage sutured to my gut. I took obsession. I took exception. I woke up a walking garment, my innards for a pennant, a permanent crest or a crown, crimped and crenellated, filleting my brow and my baby for a pigskin clutch, accouchement. On a couch, we rode like dead Etruscans for the afterlife, clutching thick, slick magazines and the hand grenade named for the pomegranate. Bon chance, shit out of luck, up shit creek on a leaky horseshoe hung up the wrong way. Twin emblems of closeness, horseshoes and hand grenades, more weight. In that pink slick grenadine rode the downers, pulled from the Seine with a sun net, with a purse seine, and set up in the Paris morgue as in a marbled parlor. A bejeweled purse, a lime sluice, a pearled vagina, a pullulating designer dog in puttees, the puttied vault of the sky, the ovulating cranial crate, which was about to be wider as it split at its eye teeth. It was a civic duty to visit them on Sundays amid the gropeurs and pickpockets, to copiously paw and snuff the nose-wrinkling tissues, to bring them back into the human family, to try to identify them by the face, clothes, or postures. That piece of shit is not my father. The bodies hit the ground in a fusillade like fuselage. You cannot hear this sound except on a snuff site. You have to go out as shame to hear the report, more like hand grenades than like pomegranates with their little list of Haitian jewels inside, twisted inventories for the Christie's auction, next bodies texting their nobiles, 50 and 200 bodies hitting the ground like exploding. I wanted to go live there. I wanted to go live in shame. As blood floods the vaulted chasm, I block the runoff channels and snuff up the charnel chum. I wanted to stop the clock. I wanted to give my brain a tuck. I wanted my brain to fold over. I wanted to close the incision with catgut and tungsten. I wanted to hack my own phone. Edison wanted to make a light bulb. Franklin wanted to make a kite light up at night. They both needed a conductor. Franklin used his son's arm. Edison used the groin hair of a sacred goat, later slaughtered. You can't even say that. It's voiceless. You can't even hear the sound unless you hit the snuff site. So rank, it rankles, too rank for Superfund. I wanted to defund it. I wanted to give my head a kick. I wanted my brain to double over, holding up its gut in the train compartment, its tank top riding up to expose its kidneys to a kick up the luggage compartment, to stuff it up in a suitcase like a prettier girl I could waste on the snuff site. The thread of life narrowed out as a jeweled thong for the bride, disappearing up the crack, reaching up through the crack to hug the waist, to find the egress, up the ass of the egret, into the afterlife. The birds we are wasting in Iraq and Iran know the only route to the afterlife. Bereft of sense, I don't want to make sense, but I want to make something Veronica as it leaves the body. The cloth of Veronica, which wiped the face of Christ, producing the fake known as the Shroud of Turin. Fake like a purse is fake and flashy and sold on folding tables or a sheet. Grab it and run when the heat comes. It cuts the air above the android in his android suit. This bull is wearing a bull suit to cook what's inside like a sacrifice. Oxygen cocktail, interior force. I wanted to wear the fake mask of Christ. I wanted to wipe the face of the crisis with my heat. I wanted to make a mask of sweat, urine, sucrose, and dopamine, endorphine, andropine. I wanted to grow chest hair in the mirror. It's breezy today and the leaves flash their asses. Something hangs down under the line of the short shorts. Something like health fruit, lemurium, pomegranate, the puddled cloth, the placket of blood, like a garment for the flagstones below the smashed skull. Sewn on the bias, the seam lies flat as a telephone, as a cell phone interior square. After it snapped the precious picture, the picture more precious than a skull. The smashed up screen makes the star in the sky like Veronica, gem apple, panties in a vending machine, coolant pools which smirk and leak. An attempt to build a thermonuclear barrier at the beach. Going to the beach anyway, catching the fish under the flagstones, sandals made of tank tread rubbed with fish guts, ceaseless report, a gun firing, a tracer whistling, a house folding, a satellite crashing into the Indian Ocean. Croupiers flourish as air douses his hands of guilt like money, stacked flat and Veronica-ing, like a hiccuping gif, a mortgage or flat tummy, a smart fabric tensing infinitely into the air like the gut of a gull that's hauling a plastic reel, so thin it's not alive anymore. So thin it can slip through the net of the sky, through the person, up the sen, and become the parenthesis for the next event. So thin it talks the air with bone meal, as in a nursery, ash meal, mome meal, Veronica powder. So that's the Ars Poetica that opens the book. It's good to have a bejeweled vagina on the first page of your book so that you will win prizes. So that's a very popular strategy. So the next poem is called Drill Down in the Fly Room. And as the title suggests, it's just about American official literacy with death and my role in it as a white person in this country, a white woman in this country. How I fit into this death language that I feel like I've been taught since birth very much through Looney Tunes cartoons. So when Lonely quoted that one poem from my first book that says, I pour out on my opera like an anvil, it's a loony image, right? It's also an image, Coyote and Roadrunner, of like an evacuated and eradicated American West. So the idea that like both that idea of like an emptiness where people have been removed, and this like play of this Cold War play can happen, Coyote and Roadrunner, and the kinds of violence you learn from that, that haunts me, and I'm constantly having to unlearn it as part of my own attempts to decolonize even my imagination. But like a lot of things that repressed, I feel them coming back. So at any rate, Drill Down in the Fly Room came from reading a lot about mourning practices around the American Civil War. But it was written in the context, obviously, of like US police violence, and against black men in this case. Drill down in the fly room. One eye, lidless, wants to close. One pupil wants to contract. One valve wants to over-emote. Two arms want to cramp instinctively back into their fetal attitude of flight or hug their own spine from the wrong side. What is it to survive or lie cosseted in a coma, a bombilation of effects, a thicket of causes, white-eyed, black-fledged, quiver of hyphens falls like arrows through the centuries. Close the skull, camera obscura, behind your drape of error. The dash cam spills its ribbon of data up in green pools above the blood bank. In dim clouds, stars rise. Each breast wears a badge that brays like a crowned tooth in a grave. This smashed clock stays right all day. Under the coroner's saw, the heart bears a crown of burst vessels. The sapiens is diademed with cabochons and fractures. It's coronation day. The morgue drawer rolls back. Coldness is a lack. Yet here's an increase. Morning unrolls its bombazine. Let's see. What time did it turn into? So I'll read another, I have two more, I'll read, I'm trying to decide how to go about this. I think I want to read a sequence that's a little bit longer, so I think I'm just going to skip to that. I probably will use up the next bit of time. I don't want to go too long, so. Well, I have two poems, okay? So this poem's called Hellebore, and it is about the same kind of theme I just mentioned. It's about Donald Duck's anger, which seems apt tonight. And it seems like, you know, like, yeah, what are all these like American angers that American keeps putting in front of the world? The kind of imperialism of American anger. And how does it block out other kinds of anger that might be useful and potent, right? Just this male anger that just turns into this violence and it's just expelled against frames and bodies. But what if we could imagine the other angers? And I know we do. And that's the funny thing about the joy tonight. It has the strength of anger, and I think they're yoked in some way. Anyway, Hellebore. 1. Run it again. Double the charge. What's the damage? Sign for it. The universe wheels around in its dishevelment like an afternoon drunk, rolls a wild eye, which is a loophole. Everything crawls out or goes in after it. This end time's gonna last a while. A cartoon toucan flies through the chemo suite, dripping sugar loops from its beak. It's on life support, on repeat. Its ink flows, anti-gravitational, flinks from its flank. Both a ballpoint pen and a butane lighter, also useful for a tracheostomy. An astronaut writes a check, a digital door swings open, debt falls out like breasts from the cargo bay. Inside the jumpsuit, a port fails, starving bears revolve on ice floes, the nest of ivies snakes like a flexible crown. Take it out on holidays, right back from the front. I am quite well in hospital. Send that lotion I like. My hat is jumping out of my brain. My groin joists groan in the wind. Pigeonhole, egg hole, hammer, staples my skull, carts around a trunkload of busted audio equipment I can't excise. Onionscapes, do something remarkable in the dark, only grow away, grow through everything, like toenails in the grave, point the way. Demolish is a word I learned from my Mickey Mouse dictionary. The greenhouse is demolished, a political word, a representation of Donald Duck's anger. In Denmark, his name is Anders And. Anders And, a feathered fist. Anders And, a convulsive contract. Anders And, a general contractor. Anders And, like a universe, slashes his own greenhouse, and anger fangs the rose with glass. The rose, who has been quietly manufacturing her own fangs, now wears a diadem of damage on the upended tums, of fungicide and bone meal. If you label it poison, they will use it to kill themselves because they love to read labels and use things, those humans. And they want to drown in the sea of the internet, like Freud said. Luckless civilians, citizen armies, spirit level in the pitted brain. Kill me with that farming equipment. Kill me with that Ashbery poem, rutabagas and farm implements in a landscape. The British call them Swedes. Carve them up and put a candle there. On the face, a chancre grows, a chancre of light, a sad sarcoma that sags from the wink. fagged out like Fruit Loops from the beak of a toucan or fish hooks in the mutilated pelican. The hard C catches the breath and throws it back. The hard O sucks the exhaust pipe of industry. Its lipstick is made of arsenic, leached from lead tailings, left over from a mining operation, and adorns the headless mountain with bright pools. We call that rigor mortis because it has such ethical rigor. Like Simone Weil's heart wall breaking down and becoming a broth to feed the rest of the starving body. When the teenager seizes in the driveway, her hatchback glides down into traffic on its own, its precious stew of heart wall leaching into the bloodstream. This poem forgot to be good. That teenager forgot not to die. Those two girls in Uttar Pradesh probably hung themselves. That mango tree colluded. That mango tree forgot to be ethical. Listing its face towards its corona, it was trying to see around. It was trying to see around its burden. It was trying to blink out its blastoma. It was trying to comb the hair of the comet from inside its sclera, uvea, and retina, where its blood wells were branching in its eyes. Its trunk was turning to stone. Who streaks the sky with her long hair out behind? What prodigy? And besides, who gapes, who gags, who knifes opens a gut to study what's clutched there? Let's empty out the ocean and store our plastic beads there, razor handles, mylar balloons, and other indigestibles. The fear of being a bad poem, the fear of a soul that would crush the palisade layer, the fear of a truncheon that would smash down the face bones, those onion domes and slender minarets, the fear of a bullet that would mark all the chests with its red line, its markdown, its infinitesimal expense. So I'm going to end with an actual ghost conjuring opera that I wrote for Leslie Chung, who, if you don't know Leslie Chung, I think possibly the most beautiful man who ever lived and the star of many Wong Kar-wai movies, including Happy Together, my favorite, Days of Being Wild, any number of beautiful movies, also a pop star. This was an effort to bring him back from the dead, but it also becomes a kind of, again, meditation on my role as a secondarily, the energy of the poem keeps kind of turning back on itself because I was very aware of myself as like a white American like consumer of Leslie Chung's image, and I'm kind of fighting with myself about this as I go. But nevertheless, like my grief and my strange grief about him and his beauty just keeps the engine of the poem like kind of turning over. So we'll see what you think. I haven't read this in a while. I'll end the poem on it, end the reading on it. So it's addressed to Leslie Chung and it's called A Wormhole for Leslie Chung. I'll be your. Let's pose at the fritillary edge of a black hole, lifting our skirts of used money to wipe our snub nose, flashing around our socket wrench, bullseye like the black-ringed eye of the universe, a shop-class Devachka dovecoat doubled up for the gut punch, kick it up to the silver punch shiver, where we dump shifty virgins into the Stygian makework. A hot migrant wave rises like daybreaks on barges burning their own fumes. Outside the premium outlets, petroleum gauntlet, heavenly channel, no slimmer than an offline power plant's compact coolant pool, no wider than a vacuum-packed wormhole, snake-sized. The satellites, antimacassar, Hades, Damascus tonight. A whole new sea of moon marks the spot where God got sick or astronaut. Days of being. Data spill. Data eating bacteria. Garble viscous dimwit Yankee codex. Code only knows I am an outsider who makes it all up. Perspire turbine suffusion, stuck up stork torso into the jet engine. Like a fork in the throat, so the engine goes. YOLO BOGO putt putt, flashing its famous lights like teeth, though thought grinds the bones like bees it makes not thing. While chemical gradients make your smile more radiant. Makeup. It stunk to high heaven. That at least was a strategy. And you can tip your psychopomp on your way out and your isotopes asymptote crass hole. A porn locker or locket, crampons for scaling Buckship Mountain, bought with coupons from a plastic wallet, street dealer, extreme couponer. What makes the shine inside not observable to the commuter riding outside, riding its flesh periphery, its can of buckshot or whatnot, toothed air, erased air rifle, which size as it rips into life? Sweet pellet, Essapeca BB capsule lodges high in the succulent occipital plangent semi-permeable. What dream? Doomsday. Well, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Ring of it has a name when it hides in its pucker bunker. Rounds like a bunny. Its end is its beginning. Answer, alcohol. Random House. You at the boarding house where the ghost made porn, wiping all surfaces with tuberculosis. Shame on you, shaming that helpless flagellate that could no longer turn its own rotor or whip itself along. I had a little Kodak garden, a little geodesic slip for launching pearls, and we sank the girls there, sieve, sand, and volleyball. Answer, the sports pavilion. Warp spasm. Prior to battle mode, I go into my warp spasm. My stiff quaff lifts with grease. I go into bunker mode. I go into beaver battalion. I grab whatever pelt is nearest and scratch it. I go into full-blown 70s mode. Candy Darling, Mick Jagger, National Organization for Women. I drop a pelt over my coiled cunt, which wears its own pelt, and ask no retribution. Overruled, I rage on in boots. I carry on naughty shoulders, each an Ouroboros or an Ouroboros circuited with traffic, sharp black spikes sawn off a litter receptacle, and the spread black jaws of rats held open with a steel nail. They say jaws of life on indefinite repeat, like a Disney ride come time release capsule, smartening up the gut, and are fastened to my garment with hot glue and a grommet. My eyes are smart with stars, like I always wanted them to be. Mad with, black with, brilliantine, suave as a boozy crooner, white with concealment power, thick as clarifying cream, made from arsenic, imported from Inchon, the 20th sea. They're for wearing, not for seeing those centuries. I vault the fluid railing, my fists thicken with fleas to 10 times their natural size. My name is New Rochelle. My name is Rancid. I swing a nightclub down over the delivery suite. I cleave. I leave. Black blood issues its data reams. PT Cruiser. It's me, John Bonet, and Lindy. We're in our PT Cruiser. We're driving into the crisis because we are motherfucking Marines. The crisis has a hole in its center like a hibiscus creep. A delicate and bitchy mathematical proposition describes the thickness of the crisis and how it wetly lifts away from its singularity, curls its lip petaluma. That's like harmonic, monstrous, and you can ride the skirt of the crisis or enter it. And you can have location or momentum, either or, that's it. That's what the particle physicist, who no longer believes in particles, said to her hair colorist, Brittany Houston. Brittany Houston, we have a problem. We have a cyst, Mr. Softy, Peanut Brickle, Sierra Mist. We have too many angry faces in this Lego kit. Enigma machine, PT Cruiser, my fusiform gyrus will not serve, rejects its function and can no longer track the stormtrooper propagating a storm system with a super swiffer under the bed. A field grows on nothing. The childish beak of the PT Cruiser into its blunt command. Biopic. I am a worm. In my guts, I make silk. And this is a ghost conjuring opera for Leslie Chung. A war wound smeared with lipstick. A gut wound smeared with marching powder. My gross clutch closes with a clasp. In my clutch are 2 walnut-sized maquiadoras filled with lady sperm in our factory. We convert weirdness to aggression, the weirdness of oppression with the weirdness of a dirndl. With our spindles and our needles, we churn up haste and waste. I wipe the face of my ghetto with a Veronica cloth. It fails the truth test. I stage a parade for cheering youth. The cheering is pumped in on audio. The youth is out of sync. In that time hole, in that irrigation ditch of where my body is thrown, I stage a century laid to waste by a foxy opera troupe. troupe of corpse fauna. They are so lithe, so acrobatic as lathes, so athletic. Tic-tac goes the conveyor. It is conveying a secret, revealed, revealed, and shortly reviled. Tick-tick, secretary of a century, sleight of hand, privy to party secrets in the privy of the after party, pricey party, bottom line goes bounce, booms, the secret base, so wide you could park a trailer there, impossible duration of the base. It drills the myocardium and the brain's vascular tissue. It fills out the pencil skirt and the tight black sweater over the face, the concussion makeup, post-confession makeover, hot cover, post-op or coin-op, whatever, Glamour magazine. With its hot OU, that blush suffuses the eye like a punch from scalp to socket. Red rocket rises in the east, and the east is red with it, hotting up the air. Film is a chemical made for your secretion. Your heat seeker finds its charnel channel, finds the teenage killer tucked up in the boat, neat acorn, hot enough to bring the boat down with your jellied gasoline walnut and your gland of flame. It cannot be shaken from the brow or the hand, but sticks there like a thought. A permanent thinky gesture. Switch, switch, like a cattail in a firestorm swoons. Oh, one. Oh, you. You ought to be chained to a lake forever. Your liver pulled away with tractor beams or tractor cables. Light bearer, rouged up Skywalker, never liver. I'll do it to you, runt of the litter. I'll be your bored babysitter. A slap on the wrist with a subscription renewal card, business reply mail, paper business. See the burster of the all paper business century. Paper money for the dead to spend at the Valhalla Health Club on treadmills. A permanently rising road to meet you and to look like you, roadkill. I hate and I love. And when I think of it, I burn. The only whale is the sperm whale. The only squid is the whale who carries her large manufactories in her gut for promulgating her own secrets in sinking secretions. Secret away on her person, the sky papers the fly paper like a trench coat with a putrid belt, riddled with buttons, mimicking bullet wounds, that riddling riddle list of flies, a system of trunks and lockets, sleeper cells, conspiracy, a syntax, tenses, and cases of magic, toxic doxa, to manage existence like an economy, produce experience, reverse out of the parking space now, turn the wheel as far as it will go, and further, backspace to the beginning of the sentence and change the tense. I am an American. I drive a car. I hate experience. I am always crashing it. I am always cashing it in for a lottery ticket or a pawn coupon, a spotted lawn or a lot to be buried in, a parking lot for my large chassis. I am always clashing with it, crashing its fete in my for rent sign party hat, jamming its signal, cramming my sensorium into its interface. And I don't want to communicate glitchy glitter, star powder, twitchy twitterer, ruthless fearer, dear labor, tickle warrior, boom boom, feral real estate, membrance order, war warbler, existence hate, self-immolation, mirror makeover, minor schedule, change to the damage program to crash one's own FET and become one's own antigen host, like zero crashing one, occupy the same space, crash the date stamp, harbor one's own destroyer in one's own harbor a drinking party, menace developer to crash the aquifer, drink mass matter, latte suffused with lavender gin, drink up the lovely bled out hour, drunk up the lovely suture for the lovely Leslie skin. The secretion feature requires debugging. It's stitched from false promises, lousy with flora. Swan, fuckstick. The only promise is the false promise. That's the only landing that sticks. Compute the exact coordinate where beauty wants to eat light. Burn the film's face. The spokes stop speaking or making the next second arrive. Tick, tick. It starts with an S. Prick. Memory stick. Neural function. Crisp collar. Delete function. Digital amnesia. Wallet ripple. Magnetic strip. Hairline. Lovely gesture. Finger line on jawline, delete the function till it hangs on air, lazy as a fan in erased place. Catwalk to an evening function, defragment, potentate, pomegranate, palm or pomade, hand grenade, overnight update, nightclub fire, reboot famous disaster, spitfire, napalm haze, melting wardrobe, century, delouses, beclouds, dream function, uplinks, delete function, and gore. The more youthful and more useless, Leslier skin. Worm music. To conclude, I scowl owlish at the clock today because the poem is done and the star is still dead. Like a star, a computer needs discretion, like a clock to make a discrete appointment wherein the star can appear like a burrito truck. But lunchtime comes to the big box store and nothing, no lunch. Time inside the time hole and time outside the time hole do not match up. A brain hangs in its own smog like an exhausted boss or a monstrous fetus hung up there in its uselessness, dawdles, dangles. A chemical digs into its own channel to the deep and empty well. The brain wants to feed there and drink its passion dry. Passion fruit, there's an app for that. Dragon fruit and the guarine, a chemical cocktail for every cock door or chrysostom, like a chalice or overgrown fiberglass chrysalis, a PT Cruiser, ugh. For every Tsarevich, an enameled egg to carry into the basement. For every golden throat, a chemical riddle, a live banner, a live wire, a 26 terabyte wormhole, bright as a Chrysler, wide as a semi, to unchoke. That's the end. Thank you. And thank you again, Kimberly, for sharing the night with me.